We go. Hey, Neat, do you know what Drew Gooden was responded with when he was asked about the adversity he had to go through to get to the NBA?
Drew Gooden.
Yeah, Drew Gooden. Do you know what he said?
What'd he say?
He said, I did have to go overcome a lot of diversity.
Diversity.
That's correct. What's up, y'all? We are back. It is February 13th, 2024. Let's get into this day in history. 1977, Dr. J played his first All-Star game. He dropped 30 and 12. The East ended up losing to the West by a single point. Do you think Dr. J's got an argument to be top 10 all time?
I do.
Do you personally have him there?
If he's not, like, I have to really dig into my top 10, but if he's not, he's in my top 15.
I got you. I think he has an argument. No, I don't have him in my top 10. I got him in the 15 to 20 range as well. I think his best days really were in the ABA. He came out, I think he was blocking like 3 shots a game when he first came out, something like that. Especially great for a small forward. So, yeah, I think he's in the 15 to 20 range. Just I think so many players have supplanted him since then. And if we're focused on just his NBA career, that's obviously a lot less than his NBA and ABA career. So that was this day in NBA history. Anyways, let's bring on our guest. We have Professor Golden on. He has a doctoral program, college leadership. He has a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, research in homeless, deviant behavior, sports impact society, teaches African-American studies, human sexuality, gender and society, sociology of marriage, sociology of sports, and introduction to sociology. Thank you for joining us, Professor.
Thank you very much. Welcome to you guys. And I heard you guys talk about this day in history, but this is also the 41-year anniversary of Marvin Gaye and the Star Spangled Banner at the Forum in Inglewood at the All-Star game. And in fact, he's the one who set the standard for the anthem. So everybody's always measured. So when people ask who's singing the anthem, the reason why is because of Marvin Gaye. Whitney Houston, in fairness to her, but Marvin Gaye set the standard.
That's dope.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I think Fergie a couple years back tried to replicate that and came off extremely sexual to the point where Charles Barkley said, I needed a cigarette. Yeah, if you watch the clip, the players are actually laughing during the singing because of how sexualized she made the anthem. Barkley even said after I need a cigarette after that performance.
Wow. And in fact, they even said today that nobody should even try to replicate that because you can't.
No, that was definitely a one-on-one type deal.
And when you have people, say your thing. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to ask you. I wanted to ask you kind of what do you think of the current climate of the NBA? From a sociology standpoint, do you think overall we're in a better place, a worse place as far as social issues, acceptance, things like that? Kind of just a general where you're at, and then I got a whole bunch of specifics I want to ask you.
Wow, Jared, that's a very loaded question. From a sociological perspective, players have more say because of Adam Silver. They wouldn't probably have that under David Stern. In reference to the NBA, in reference to overall play, it's not as intense as the 1980s were, the golden age of the NBA from 1980 to 1989 when it was on CBS. And even the analysts, they don't have the same passion. From a sociological perspective, I think fans don't have the same knowledge base. They're looking at points instead of looking at overall team play, individual play. And back then, there was more team. It was team-oriented. But then you fast forward to the 1990s, and the impact of Michael Jordan and more individualized play. Fast forward to 2000s when the ratings were really on a decline. Then all of a sudden, in 2011, the NBA Finals ratings start going up, and that coincides with LeBron James going to Miami, because now in any situation you got to either have a dynasty or a villain in order for people to be interested, and that's what you had. You had a villain. In the 90s, you had the Bulls dynasty. In the 80s, you had the Celtics, Lakers, and the Pistons that won championships, and the 76ers. And so, and it was about team. When you start talking about the 4-5-4 76ers, the Celtics, Showtime Lakers, and the Bad Boy Pistons. And so everybody's trying to recapture those glory days, but you can't, because one, guys, Nick and Jared, you only had 24 teams back in the 80s. Now you have 30. So what happens is the talent pool is not the same. There's guys that wouldn't have made the league in the 80s that are in the league now. And plus, defenses, well, the lack thereof. So, but the social media also, because now guys are into their, in the sociological, the branding. That's another thing. Guys are not about the work, the pride. Because see, when you had the pride, that brings in the work ethic. There's a whole lot there, man, to unpack. So that's a very, very, it's not a complicated question. It's an easy question to ask, but it's so many different layers. And it's a good question.
No, I appreciate the answer. I do have a question though about the work ethic. We got guys like
Yes.
Charles Barkley in the 80s, for example. His pregame meal was 2 Big Macs. Now every guy's got a nutritionist, a trainer. Guys are in a lot better shape and all that. So it
Right.
seems like they have a harder work ethic in that, especially in the preparation of the game. Do you think that's just because of skill and talent, or do you think that's because of the drive, or do you think that's also because of the drive of their brand? Where do you think that comes into play?
Well, today's players, and that's a good question. Today's players look at it as a branding, which is about business. The guys in the 80s looked at it as pride. Okay. And that pride drives you. This is now, it's a job. See what I'm saying? And they're not trying to sell the game. They're trying to sell themselves. It's not about the front of the jersey, it's about the back of the jersey. Case in point, you know I'm a Laker fan. And LeBron James came to the Lakers with MVPs, came to the Lakers with championships. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. But he still has to prove that he's a Laker. That means championships define him. I don't care who you are. When you put that jersey on, it's about the banners and it's about the names in the rafters. And it's about championship plus Laker Nation.
It's a legacy team.
It's a legacy, yeah. And the Celtics and the Lakers are the benchmarks of that league. Every league, whether it's the NFL, where you got the Steelers, you got the Cowboys, you got the 49ers, you got the
Yankees.
Patriots, you got the Yankees in baseball, you got the Dodgers. Talking about championships. That's what you're defined as. So it's not about, you could come to those teams with MVPs. Reggie Jackson came to the Yankees with MVPs, with rings with him. However, he understood this is the standard bearer. Because what I did in Oakland is one thing. What I'm doing for the Yankees, that's another thing. And that's what, and he went into the Hall of Fame as a Yankee. Not as an Oakland A's, where he won more in Oakland than he won with the Yankees. He played more years in Oakland than he played with the Yankees. But he won championships with the Yankees. And that's what that's what he became Mr. October when he was with the Yankees. And so that's how you define as. So this goes back to the whole thing with the premise of your question about this pride thing. Okay, guys had pride. Today's players, it's about brand. What am I going to do to improve my brand? And then the fan is also, and in fact, there was a study that was just done where the Z generation is the least fan appreciate. How do I want to say this? They're the least passionate fan base compared to the millennials and Generation X and the boomers.
Why do you think that is?
Because of social media, because they have more entertainment options. See, if you think about when ESPN came and played September 1979, you just had 3 networks: ABC, CBS, NBC, and then public broadcasting. Then you have the advent of cable television. So you didn't have as many options for entertainment. Plus, the NBA only came on 1 day a week, on the weekend. And then they begin to expand. And so you have a saturation now of sports, but also it's also about streaming too. And so a lot of things are different now. And a lot of times when you go to sporting events, people are into their cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
The Super Bowl just played less than 48 hours ago. It was in Vegas. They said it was the most watched Super Bowl in history. However, most people were watching the commercials. Most people were there for the entertainment. The game was secondary, but it was a good game. See what I'm saying?
Great
So
game.
when you start-
Overtime, one
great game.
score.
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, my family, they watched, I didn't watch the game, but they watched for a halftime show. So now it's about who's going to be the halftime show. See what I'm saying?
That's a common thing too. That
Exactly, Nick. And then, and I have to say this, Taylor Swift is bigger than the game.
they talked about it the whole time. They was
That's
like,
what I'm saying.
is this her man's game or is this hers?
That's
Whose
right.
Super Bowl is it really?
That's right. That's correct. And the network knew every shot we do, people are basically texting in real time. See what I'm saying? And see, I saw this trend coming. So you know what? Because I teach summer classes. In 2013, I knew my students wanted to watch Game 6 of the NBA Finals. Game 7, Miami and San Antonio. Fast forward 3 years later, I come into class, Cleveland and Golden State. First thing they said, we watching Game 6 on Thursday? I said, well, I guess I ain't lecturing in. I ain't have a choice. So I had to create an assignment based on that game in class. So they watch Game 6 for a class assignment. So it's like with the sociological, with social structure is one thing, but then you have governance inside the classroom. So sometimes you have to change your approach in reference to teaching because you can make it relevant. Use the social media, since people are into social media, and try to gather what people are thinking because people are jotting their thoughts out in real time. So when they're looking at the ratings, are the ratings high because of the good game? Or are the ratings high because people want to see every image of Taylor Swift? And then also all the other celebrities. Had that game been in Indianapolis, same 2 teams, same outcome, same everything, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have been that highly viewed as this one. But it was because it was Vegas. Because remember, when the Super Bowl first started, it was only in 3 cities. First 7, it was in Los Angeles area,
Pasadena.
then it was in Miami, Pasadena, and then it was in New Orleans. And then Super Bowl 8 was in Houston. Then they went back to Pasadena, New Orleans, and Miami. Then Super Bowl 16 was that was the first cold weather Super Bowl. That was in Pontiac.
Mark
See.
Schlereth talked about that one time with the Super Bowl. I think it was in Indianapolis, and they have a dome. And he said, when you're in a cold city in the winter, all there is you take your family, go down and eat. You go back up to the room, say, you want to go eat again? Want to go eat again? And that's why they said,
right.
they want to get Super Bowls in warm weather cities to go out and do something, experience the nightlife, whatever the case may be.
Jared, that's what it's about. It's about the cuisine. First of all, when cities bid on Super Bowls, They look at interstate accessibility highways. They look at cuisine, nightlife. They look at all that. And so the reason why Atlanta didn't get the Super Bowl for years is because of the snowstorm. And they lost money. So they said, we can't let that happen again. So, yeah, so there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot to unpackage there, man. I hope I answered your question.
No, you definitely did. Nick, you got something for him?
He actually, in speaking, is answering a few of the questions that I have, which I kind of figured was going to happen because it sounds like he answered this in a sense, but one of my questions is, at this point, has skill set taken a back seat to popularity?
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt. And not only skill set, and like I said, the skill set and the pride in all sports, but yes, most definitely. Yes. And when you can sit back and turn a game on, man, I can't watch this, man. These guys done quit. You could tell. It's like, damn, really? Come on. So
well, it does seem like it's easier to break people's spirits nowadays as opposed to before. It did seem like there was much more drive. But I have a question for you based off the social construct of this country. Is let's go with this. And I don't have the numbers, but basketball bare minimum is at a extremely distant second to football. However, though, it is a more global game. You see more people playing basketball than you play football. So my question is, I have a bunch of questions based off this, but we'll start off with that one. One, why is basketball so far behind football in terms of popularity in this country? And two, what would it take for it to overtake it? And we can also throw in things like, soccer, which football is the most popular sport around the world, and this type of football, what they call American football, nobody else plays that around the world. Canada, you know what I mean? But, they had NFL Europe for a while, but that's not going on continent to continent.
Okay, that's an interesting question. Let's deal with the football first. If you notice, Pop Warner personnel playing Pop Warner Pee Wee has been declining. See that documentary, The League of Denial, with the concussions. If you notice, they're not going to Germany and Paris and playing those games by accident. They're going to recruit because they need players 10, 15 years down the road. A lot of people are not playing football like they used to. They're playing international sports. The two international sports are basketball and soccer. Those are two international. And the NBA is catching up. It's catching up. Okay, I'll tell you this. They're going to add another game to the regular season. I'm going to tell you that right now. They play 17 games, right? Now you wonder why, Professor, why they going to add another game? What's happening this weekend? What holiday is?
I mean, Valentine's Day, if you want to consider that.
Valentine's Day tomorrow.
Okay.
It's President's Day. People are off on Monday. If you add another game, a lot of people didn't go to work yesterday because Super Bowl. If you add another game, they don't have to go to work anyway because they're already off. See what I'm saying? So stay tuned on that. Plus, it's an even number game, and you already have only 8. Most teams only play 8 home games. They can't play 9. So they have to play in another neutral site. Okay, see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're playing in Paris. They're playing in Germany. They're trying to recruit people, like I said, to come and play football in states. It's not going to happen because that's not their sport. That's not their culture. It's not their culture. Their culture is soccer. Their culture, if it's not soccer, it's basketball. Okay. And so David Stern's idea was to make basketball a global sport. And what he did is he used players. He used players to promote the sport, individuals, their stories. See what I'm saying? The NFL is trying to do it, but them helmets. Okay. Plus, the NFL's arrogance is going to cost them. Yeah, because see, and you ask an interesting question, because now you got the Las Vegas Super Bowl. Where's the Super Bowl at next year? Is it going to be as popular as this one? Because it's not in Vegas. You know, everybody, anything in Vegas, everybody's going to want to be there.
Well, it's in
It's New Orleans
Where?
is the one next year. New Orleans.
Okay, is everybody want to be in New Orleans? I don't think so. New Orleans ain't been the same since Hurricane Katrina. You know what I'm saying? So you're not going to have the interest. People going to be interested, but in reference to the casual fan going to New Orleans, nah, not like Vegas.
So why
Not like
isn't
Vegas.
basketball as popular as football? If that's only like a this country thing, and more people play basketball, at the gym, on the corner, in the park, wherever. Why do you think basketball? Why do you think football is so much further ahead
Because
than basketball?
because 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 football is the American sport, whereas basketball is more global. And you have to remember something. Basketball was behind baseball. Baseball was the number one sport. But the people who ran baseball did not market baseball like it should have. And that was the problem. And then football began to become more popular in reference to how it was marketed, in reference to the players. So that has a lot to do with it. But basketball is starting to come slowly but surely. It's
Well,
going to
actually,
take a while. It's going
that
to
led
take a
in,
while.
I agree, and that led into my next question. The top three sports in the 1950s was was
Baseball.
baseball, boxing, and horse racing. And why do you
Mhm.
think all of those fell off? And I did want to say this: the problem with baseball, in my opinion, and nobody ever brings it up
It's
like
too
this.
slow.
No, no, no. Well, this is why though, because the defense has the ball.
Mhm.
Nobody ever
I'll
puts
tell
it
you.
that way.
Yeah, baseball, the reason why baseball is losing because it's a lot of inaction. It's a lot of nothing. It's a lot of stalling, standing around doing nothing for a while. And they're trying to speed the game up, but it's not going to work. Boxing, the reason why boxing declined because the personalities were in boxing what made it popular. You had Ali, you had Sugar Ray Leonard, the Olympics. You got to remember something also. The last Olympics that people watched, boxing that really watched, viewership was 1988. After 88, viewership began to decline in boxing. They began to show less of it. And then with streaming devices now with Peacock, you rarely see boxing on corporate media now because everybody don't want to get Peacock. So with Olympics, because you went from Olympics and you went straight into professional. But then, like I said before, you had people the personalities. You had Sugar Ray Leonard. You knew the weight classes. You had Marvin Hagler. You had Roberto Duran. And the guys who were in boxing, they had nicknames. The Hands of Stone Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, the Hitman Tom. They were in one weight class. Then you start thinking about
The Four Kings.
the heavyweights, the Four Kings. You had Ali. You had Smoking Joe Frazier. You had George Foreman. You had Ron Lyle. You had Oscar Buenavena. You had Jerry Quarry. You had Ken Norton. And Ali sold the sport. You take those personalities, every sport, you have to have personalities that are bigger than the sport. Plus, Ali, with the stuff that was going on with Ali with Vietnam, he transcended the sport. All those guys I mentioned transcended the sport. Mike Tyson, when Mike Tyson fought here in Arizona, when I was going to school here in Arizona, when Tyson fought in the 80s, it was like the Super Bowl. People got cable, HBO just for Tyson's fights. When they went to pay-per-view, it killed the sport. And if you know it, I'm going to tell you something right now. The NFL is on its way. Because one of the playoff games, Kansas City played who? Who did Kansas City play and the game wasn't on regular TV, it was on streaming?
I don't remember
And
the first. Are you talking
yes,
about the
this
first
was
one?
during the playoffs. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
during the playoffs. That was a mistake. That was a mistake. And see, this is what I'm saying, that the NFL, because of its arrogance, it's been steadily declining. But see, the people who watch it and the people who report it, they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you it's been in decline. And if you notice, people just watch the Super Bowl. That's one game. But the more you begin to see over and over, especially with the new generation, I'm not watching, no, not doing that.
Well,
And then go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of the new generation with the NBA, since LeBron was the face for so long, who are we now? Because it seems the top 5 players in the league right now are all foreign. So
That's true.
Do we have
That,
foreign
that
players as the face of the league, or who do you think right now in the social constraints of our minds is the face of the league? Is it still LeBron, even though he's clearly not the best
it's,
player?
it's first of all, it's LeBron because he plays for the flagship team, the Lakers. He just won a championship 4 years ago. Okay,
That's
he's still
forever in
doing his thing.
sports.
Hmm?
That's forever in sports, though. 4 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, 4 years ago. That's forever. Until somebody is able to transcend the game, whether they're winning championships, whether they are doing other things, you got to have personalities. And I once again, I go back to the 1980s. You guys, before you brought me up, were talking about Dr. J. Dr. J transcended the sport. Then it was in phases. He passed the torch to Irvin and Larry, who came in 1979. They made college basketball because back then it was just the national semifinals and the national final. There was no term Final Four. And if you look at it, that game, do you know what that game was in 79? March 26, 1979 was a Monday. That game was in Salt Lake City, Utah, on the campus of the University of Utah. In 3 years, they were playing a dome Final Four in New Orleans, North Carolina, Georgetown. You had a black coach, Catholic school, and Dean Smith, and they built that game, the pupil versus the teacher, because Dean Smith coached John Thompson. That was the headline. And in fact, leading into during the season, there was an article in Sports Illustrated, and they predicted Georgetown would play in the championship game. And they said the only thing that's going to stop this team from winning the championship is if they put a roadblock in New Orleans or North Carolina. And those two teams met each other.
Mm.
And then 2 years later is Seattle. Then you had all the other ones. But the last Final Four that was in a small arena was in 1996. From 97 to the present day, it's been in dome stadiums.
96 was the year UCLA won it, right? With
96 was no. That was 95. That was in
Okay.
Seattle. 96 was Kentucky, Mississippi State, Oklahoma State. No, Oklahoma State was 95. Mississippi State, Syracuse, Kentucky, and UMass. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
After 96, it's been in all dome stadiums. But those two, 1979, that's when the Final Four took off. That's when the NCAA tournament took off. And contrary to popular belief, men's basketball is in trouble. It's in trouble. But I know that you didn't want to talk about that tonight, but you want to talk about other things. Go ahead.
No. I got so many questions. And you've always been full of answers. That's why I got so many questions. But what I wanted to know is, what do you think about players that drives them to, I mean, it can be owners, it can be anybody, but these players that 93% of all people in prison currently are at the poverty line or below. So it seems normally poverty drives criminality, but we see a lot of players committing crimes and Rajon Rondo recently got arrested for gun charges. We got guys like Vince McMahon right now, and I know this isn't basketball, but shitting on people's head and being convicted of being accused of sex trafficking and things like that. You got guys like Javarius Critton doing life in prison because after he got in the NBA, he joined a gang and started committing drive-bys, and threw away millions of dollars, even if not here, overseas or whatever. What do you think drives players to do that?
There's a lot of them live in an alternative universe. They think that because if they haven't been held accountable when they were younger, and if they are found out, caught, they're not prosecuted to the fullest of the law. Thank you, Nick. Slap on the wrist. So they figure, well, if I did this, I can get away with this. And that's what drives them, because they've never been held accountable. And this goes back to them being compromised when they were younger. See, if they were suspended, if they were kicked off the team, and they got a second chance, then they'll arrow their ways, they straighten out. But no, they've been doing this for years. And then you have to also look at when you start looking at coaches who haven't been held accountable. I mean, what do you expect? the player's going to act the same way. So it has that drives a lot of their criminality. And they figure, hey, they'll overlook what I'm doing. Or if somebody else did it, I could do it. That drives a lot of it.
And if I can, because I even have an opinion on this, I also feel as though, not to necessarily blame the parents, but I do feel as though part of it starts in the house too, because we kind of live in a culture and an era where parents are pushing their kids out there, wanting them to rule and run the whole family and everything like that. And these kids have mindsets where they just want to be block captains, but they have a skill set. Their parents force them into a sport, but they don't know how to act because they're not brought up. They're not nurtured with their talent. They're just, you have this, go out there, make money and bring it home. So their mindset is not.
Nick, what we call that is a child, a parent living through their child. And that's what you have. A parent is living through their child. One of the most detrimental things that I've seen over the last few years is how you have the parents, not just at the draft, but they're interviewing the parents right after the player is selected. See, parents have always been at the draft. They've been always at the table, but then you're interviewing the parents right there. Okay. And the parents a lot of times are living through their child. And a lot of times the child is dictating what the parents are doing. Ja Morant, prime example. Where the veterans? See, the thing is, and I go back to the Lakers. Magic has said something. He said, Kareem let us do, but they knew they couldn't just get away with anything because he was that veteran presence on that team. And if you look at the guys who were on these teams that were championships, you always had a veteran presence. Dennis Rodman didn't start acting foolish till he left the Pistons because Rick Mahorn, this is a true story. Dennis Rodman, the first year they played the Lakers in '88. Chuck Daly didn't announce a bad check, the players did. Isaiah Thomas is the captain. Rodman goes out, he's not in bad check. So you know what they did? Isaiah, Rick Mahorn, and Bill Lambier were waiting for him in the lobby of the hotel. When he gets out the cab, he saw them three. He said, oh, shit. And he brought this up during his when they retired his jersey. Because he knew it wasn't Chuck Daly, it wasn't Dick Versace, it was those three. Isaiah went up to him when he came in the hotel, punched him dead in the chest, said, we are not here for that. We're here to win. This is a business trip. And in every team, you need that. 49ers. Do you know who was the leader on that team in the 80s? Ronnie Lott. He was the one who kept Charles Haley together. And when Charles Haley was acting a fool, Ronnie Lott was playing with the Raiders. They told them, go get Ronnie in the Raiders locker room to calm Charles Haley down. That's a true story. You need people like that. See, that's what you need. You need that on all teams because you need to have somebody there to keep those other guys in line. So you don't have the Crittenens. You don't have these guys doing the stuff they're doing. Because somebody said, no, young fella, you ain't gonna do this. You ain't gonna do this.
What's the problem? What's the problem if we have those players now? We just get people that recoil and they don't want the stress and the tension and the violence. And then so if they're doing that to players making more money than the enforcers get kicked off the team, or why can't we just do that now?
Jared, that's a good. You don't have enforcers in the league. And it goes back to, well, I don't want to get involved, but they won't listen. Well, you bring somebody in there, make them listen. See, the Denver Broncos, back-to-back champions in the 90s. John Elway was the leader, but they had guys on that team, Rod Smith, Shannon Sharp, who policed them other cats. You ain't gonna come in here and do this. This is how we don't do that here. They hold you accountable. You need those guys that on that team. You mentioned Mark Slayer. You ain't gonna do that here. And you need that. You don't fast forward to today. You don't have those people on there on the team that have that veteran presence. See, I'm gonna share this with you about the Houston Rockets. Dream is the one who gets all the credit, and rightfully so, but he wasn't the heart and soul of that team. It was them guards. It was Vernon Maxwell, Kenny Smith, and Sam Cassell, along with Mario Ellie. Okay. And anytime somebody got out of line, you had to deal with them guys. Plus, you had to deal with Dream. And plus, there was a guy, Mr. Mean, that's Larry Smith. And each guy, Maurice Lucas of the Trailblazers, you just had those certain type of fellas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I always heard Otis Thorpe didn't take no shit either.
No, he didn't. And in
Oakley.
fact, I'm Oakley. But let's go back to Otis Thorpe, because a guy I played against, him and Otis were friends, and the Rockets were upset when they traded Otis Thorpe for Clyde Drexler. The players didn't want him. That's how close to the team that was.
Mm.
See, but Otis, no. Otis and Larry Smith, no. You didn't mess around. But you need those type of guys on those teams.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Charles Oakley. Let me address Charles Oakley. Charles Oakley was an enforcer. I truly believe if Charles Oakley would have stayed in Chicago, Jordan would have broke Wilt Chamberlain's scoring record. I really believe that. I'm talking about in a game. Jordan had to do more work because Oakley was in for you. Didn't mess with Jordan because you had to deal with Oakley. But go ahead. You had something to say. Sorry about that.
Well, I was going to say, do you think those, because you said there are none, so what do you think behavior is crucial for a team who really wants to win?
Discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, that's a good question, Jared. Everybody has to be all 12 players. This is important. All 12 players plus coaches plus management have to think championship every single year, every day. James Worthy tells a story. If you were getting in the way of our championship, we had to talk with you. Okay, so you have to understand that everybody, when they come in, that's what you're thinking about. From day one of training camp. No, even before training camp. You start, even before training camp, you start bringing in them veterans to start talking to guys, explaining this is what we did when we were here.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is how we did things when we were here. When Kevin Garnett went to Boston, he wore jersey number 5. Now, the guy who previously wore that jersey was Bill Walton. Bill Walton was MVP. Bill Walton was championship MVP. Bill Walton was 6th man of the year. But Kevin Garnett went and talked to Bill Russell, so he can understand what it was like to be a Celtic, and he embraced that. And that's why he's beloved in Boston. Even though he only won 1, he's beloved because he embraced that uniform. Even though, yeah, I'm coming with an MVP, but I ain't done nothing because it's about this, it's about that. Those banners in the rafters. I ain't talking about the Celtics, but you asked a question, I'm just being honest.
No, I
feel
it.
Yeah. And it's like that in every sport, because like I mentioned to you about Reggie Jackson. See, it ain't about you. It's about what's in front of the jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you start talking to these other guys who were here before you and understand that even though this is what you did in a previous place, but now you're not just playing for you. You're not just playing for your team. You're not just playing for these fans. You're also playing for history. You're playing for all the guys who came before you, especially if you are going against a rival. You got to understand this is what you're playing for. That's why when certain teams play against each other, there's a certain intensity. And that's at every level, especially when it's a rival, regardless of sport.
Nick, you got anything you want to ask? Because I got a few more.
Okay. So I feel as though I'm seeing the respect level shift as far as, and I feel as though it can be attributed to social media. It has us feeling like it's so easy to touch these players. It's so easy to be in front of them. We can follow them all over the place, social media, stuff like that. It makes us feel like we know them. So it feels like people are looser at the tongue when it comes to players nowadays. Like, you feel me? LeBron is out there, they talking all kinds of shit. I'll do this and that to your mom. And it's like, is this due to the fact that we feel as though we know them? Now we can talk to them any old kind of way, or we feel like we see them on a daily basis, so we feel like we know what they are and aren't about and the things they will and won't stand for. So now we're testing people.
Social media has changed the whole landscape. And what players have to do is they need to stay off social media. They need, because you got social media, you got electronic media, you got print media, then you got the 24-hour news cycle. There's no break, none. And so when you make mistakes, they're going to be magnified, and because people are saying what they're saying in real time. Plus, and this is important, and I'm surprised you guys haven't brought this up, the whole thing with these sports kings with betting. You got shows, they got 30-minute talk shows dealing with betting, odds and everything. Yeah, they gamble back in the day. But now you got segments on sports shows where they have people who, that's
Can I jump in really quick?
Go ahead.
Just to tell you this, when you used to go to scores on ESPN, it would just say, tonight there's Suns versus Kings, and that's all it would say. It might have the line. Now under it has a big box with who the line is, what's the over under. It has a huge bar with it when you just go to look at the scores.
That's correct. And a lot of people got money on this too. So that's fueling their commentary on this event. That's fueling this ugliness. And Nick, you mentioned something that's important. It's also people attacking their children. Now LeBron has a son who's in college. They're writing negative stories about his son. So they're not just, in the word people use is trolling. They're not just trolling the father. They're trolling their son. They're trolling their children. And they figure,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, say your thing.
And that can be good for the players, because it's like, and like you're saying, they need to get off social media. You need to protect your family, because how well are you going to play when your son is at home being attacked? Where's your head at?
I remember 20 years ago when Allen Iverson was playing in Philadelphia. He was on the bench crying because of death threats, and he got a lot of them. And the death threats were coming. They were talking about attacking his ex-wife and his children. And see, when they start attacking your family, I think about the 2016, I alluded this, in 2016 finals, Golden State and Cleveland, where Riley Curry, Steph Curry's daughter, was getting death threats. She was 3. She's getting death threats. Monet Davis, Little League World Series back in 2014, she getting death threats. Yeah. So social media has fueled a lot of this. So a lot of times people don't have any filters at all. And they feel like that they own these players. So,
well, my question is the other side. Like, we'll go with we'll use Westbrook for example. A lot of people call him Westbrook because of his poor shooting percentage. Now, when they call him Westbrook, this guy is he's up in their face. He's calling them out on the court. To me, that seems like such an irrelevant insult, although he takes it extremely personally.
Right.
Do you think they are being, I guess, uber sensitive about things that shouldn't matter and more proactive about things that should, or do you think that is the right reaction for a player of his caliber to be calling out fans and getting in their face and putting himself in nothing but bad situations, or be calling him Westbrook?
You're asking a person who teaches African history and sociology and deals with history. And I think about all the insults, Jackie Robinson and Rachel. I think about all the insults, Willie Stargell, Sandy Koufax, who was Jewish. I think about all the insults, Bob Gibson, who pitched angry. They changed the rules in '68 because of him, who was the MVP. I think about all the insults, Roger Maris and Hank Aaron, the death threats Hank Aaron went through. We come up 50 years of Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's record. All the insults they went through. and you worried about somebody calling you Westbrick. Luka had somebody kicked out the game 2 weeks ago because somebody said you need to get on the treadmill. Okay. And the first thing I thought about, really? They've said worse. And they were going after not only Jackie Robinson, they told him, if you show up and play, we're going to kill you and your infant son. And you worried about somebody calling you this? Now, players should not have to go through that.
Right.
But some of the things that they said to Serena and Venus, some of the things that were said to Steffi Graf and Monica Seles.
Bill Russell.
Oh my God, the things that Bill Russell went through in Boston, where they defecated in his bed, turned over trash cans, smeared feces and wrote racial slurs with the feces.
No.
This is what this man went through and still won 11 championships for that franchise. And
Juanita.
2 as a player coach.
I mean, look at Juanita. Jordan.
Yeah.
They were spitting on her.
Yeah, Juanita Jordan, Detroit, they spit on her. Yeah. And you worried about them calling you Westbrick? So yeah, it's beyond sensitive, but like I said before, players need to get off social media. They need to just sit it away. They need to not just social media, also electronic and print media, 24-hour news cycle. So it's a combination of those things.
I have a question for you because we were talking about this before the podcast. JJ Redick actually brought it up to Kevin Love on his podcast, and then there was the incident with Montrezl Harrell and Luka Doncic. Where do you stand on players being called a bitch-ass white boy? And is that racist if they hold no power over them to control their career and them in the league or anything like that?
Does that person who used that language hold write checks? Do they have any power? Okay.
No, but I do want to say this. LeBron holds a lot of power and he doesn't write their checks either. So if someone like a LeBron said it, then would it be a power thing or it still doesn't matter?
No, because first of all, LeBron don't write checks. He has influence.
Okay.
That's one thing. But they don't have to listen to him. He's not the general manager. Do they run decisions by players? Sure they do. See what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And it goes back to what you're saying. There's a whole lot of other things being said about players on the court. Far worse than that. So no, it's about who holds the power. See, when I was doing my graduate work, I was trying to explain that Michael Jordan at that time was still playing. He didn't really have, he was being alienated from himself, and my instructor couldn't understand that because she was looking at how much money he was being made. I was trying to make a point here. He's an employee. He wasn't writing checks. The person who had the power was Jerry Krause. But see, she couldn't see it that way. So if you
he destroyed a dynasty for it. He destroyed the dynasty for it.
It wasn't Phil Jackson, it wasn't Rodman, it wasn't Pippen, it wasn't Jordan. It was Jerry Krause. He destroyed, and being from Chicago, yeah, he destroyed the dynasty. I wasn't a Bulls fan. I hate the Bulls. I'll be honest with you, because of how they treated those players on that franchise. And in fact, I don't know if you were in class when I mentioned this, Jared, and every time I mention this, Jordan was the 8th highest paid player on the team. And people and so I'm thinking I'm just going to move on. No, students were like, no, we got to address this. What do you mean? I said, I'm just telling you, they never renegotiated his contract. Never. And if you look from his first contract after he won the MVP in 88, his next contract was from 88, 89 to 95, 96. He was the 8th highest paid player on the team. If you look at that period, he was the MVP in 91, 92, and 96. He was the finals MVP 4 times. He was an all-star MVP once or twice. I can't remember. But the point, look at all the things
Gold
he
medalist.
did within that 8 years. Gold medalist. all that stuff. And he
Scoring
retired.
champ, steals champ, defensive player of the year, all NBA, all
that,
defense.
all that. They never renegotiated his contract. I want you to understand it. Nick, did you know that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they did towards the end of his career, but I knew it was shady. The whole
Well, his last 2 years is when he really started making a lot, like 25, 30 million each year.
And he's no, Jared. He made 37 1 year, 35 1 year, 37 on 1 year contracts.
Right. That's what I meant.
1 year, 1 year.
Yeah.
Right.
Never renegotiated his contract at all.
Right.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
And in fact, that's why they can't get top flight free agents.
Still to this day, you think?
To this day. In fact, Kevin Garnett was asked by Peter Vesey, did you ever think about going home to Chicago? He said, come on, Mr. Vesey. The way they did Pippen and Jordan? No. When LeBron James was a free agent, he met with the Bulls brass. He asked them this question. When we start winning championships, you're going to break up the team. Now, let's put that in perspective. LeBron James was 13 years old when they won their last championship. How would he know that? Because he understands history. So,
Now, I do have a question. So, I'm under the impression that Jordan, because of how popular he was, we're starting to see bigger contracts and stuff like that. Not just because of Jordan, but I'm feeling like the big contracts started coming in around what 90s and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. Where we're in the 2020s, where these players are making within what 3-4 year contracts more than some of these legendary players have made over the whole course of being in the sport itself. So my question is that taking some of the drive away? Because we're seeing players that appear to be a little softer these days. Are we chasing money too much? Is this what's going on, where we're feeling like what's more important is the bag versus the accolades versus the accomplishment versus the hardware?
I'm glad. That's a good question. Magic Johnson told David Stern that, David, you paying these players too much money. And people might have thought he was hating. He wasn't hating. It goes back to pride. I mean, let me share this with you about Larry Bird. When Magic Johnson announced he was HIV positive in November 7th, Thursday, November 7th, 1991, Bird walked out of practice. He cried. Bird played another few months. He retired. Dave Gavitt, who was the general manager of the Celtics, told Bird, if you stay with the franchise one more day, you could $15 million kicked in. He walked out. The reason why he walked out, and Nick, this is to your question. He said because he was only playing because he wanted another shot at Magic in the finals, and that's what drove him. So to answer your question, for them, Jordan had a love of the game clause in his contract. Bird had all them cats. It was about pride. That's what drove them. The guys today, it's about the bag. I mentioned Bob Gibson. Bob Gibson played with a broken leg. Roberto Clemente broke his leg. He wouldn't come out the game. Sandy Koufax used to get cortisone shots in his elbow and go out pitch complete games. Pride. Jim Brown walked away at 29. One more, 29. I'm gonna stop right there.
Well, I got one for you too. Dave Cowens, I forget which player did it in the 70s. Hold on, wait a minute. But Dave Cowens worked a cab, was an MVP, and had to work a cab at night to pay his bills in the off season. But somebody flopped against him once. He was in disbelief. He ran up, he body checked the dude into the third row or something like that.
That's
Yelled
right.
at her. He goes, now that's a fucking foul.
Yeah. Yep. Nobody questioned his heart. As a coach and as a player, Tommy Heinsohn, they had a thing called the no layup rule.
Oh.
Okay? I see cats going to the basket. No. You be in the stands. We mentioned the bad boys. Rick Mahorn brought that style to the Pistons. They weren't the bad boys. He said he was taught by Wes Unseld and Greg Ballard and Jeff Rulin. This is how you play the game. Yes, go ahead.
Well, and I want to say Bill Laimbeer came from a prominent family. His dad, I forget what his dad owned something. He didn't have to play basketball. He had a
No, he
career
didn't.
path where he would have made
That's
plenty of money and
that's
stuff like
correct.
that. So
That's
all the
correct.
stuff he did was out of pride. It was not out of
Yeah.
necessity because
That's
he had a
right.
fallback plan.
Yes, he did. He wore a hockey mask. You can't play. He put a hockey mask on. See, those guys had pride. These guys today, it's about the bag. You
Can you
can't
blame them,
compare.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't blame them, but the money should not be the one that drives you. It should be
That's
your
why I
pride
blame them.
from inside. Yeah.
Well, here's a sociology question for you. If we're in a monetary system, which we are, why wouldn't the money drive you?
Because you're not just doing something for money. You feel me? Like basketball is an actual sport. So why would you get into basketball just to get money? Most of these
Because
people that play
well,
that play basketball have been doing it since they were children.
but it's
So
like the professor said. You got your family at the table. Mom needs a new house. Mom needs some
Mhm.
money. Your sisters do. Your brothers do. You know, a lot of times, you got a kid before you get your first NBA contracts. You got a family to feed. You got kids to feed. Why wouldn't it be? Not only that, with like things like redlining, especially like since most of the athletes in the NBA are predominantly black, redlining, generational poverty, things like that. Well, my mom didn't make it. My grandfather didn't make it. Whoever didn't make it, I need to make as much money as I can to protect as many generations of my family as I can.
You
you
can do
start off
that.
with the love though. You start off
Yeah.
with the love of the sport. You feel me? And that's what gets you to the point where you can actually make it to the league. So once you get past that and now you're just focusing on the bag, somebody that's driven by money, all it takes is money to sway them the other way. So now your focus is no longer on the sport. Now your focus is no longer on what's getting you the bag because you're being bought at all
Mhm.
times. So that's what I'm saying. No, we need to focus on the skill. We need to get past the greed aspect of it because a greedy person is going to go as far as your dollars take them. You can't
See the
trust
thing. Yeah. See the thing is, back then you had guys who they got paid. They got paid what they were worth market value, but what also drove them is their pride to get better, and they pushed each other. That's what made all the sports great. It wasn't just the work in the season; it was work after season.
them.
See, Jerry Rice gets a lot of credit for the hill. He wasn't the one that started that. It was Roger Craig. Roger Craig wasn't the one that started it. He started working out with Walter Payton, the late great Sweetness. So what made Jerry Rice great is his work ethic. What made Pete Rose great, it was their work ethic. It's that pride to get better. They win a championship, they're still working. What drove Kobe was that work ethic.
Yep, that's exactly what I was
The
going to
work
say.
ethic.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what made it. Is that work ethic to push
And,
themselves.
and you know what? Even though Iverson didn't appear to have Kobe's work ethic, he at least had Kobe's heart. Because Iverson would go to the club, be out drinking and partying, and
That's
then
right.
come and still drop like 30, 40 on you. And you got players who can't even make it through a whole season, or
Right.
they coughing and all of a sudden they sitting out, or they stomach hurt and they sitting out. And we got players playing in pads.
What Allen Iverson led the league in minutes played. Allen Iverson was barely 6 feet, but it goes back to his heart. And see, that's what drove him. That pride thing. And I go back to Larry Bird, that pride thing. Let me share this with you, and I know I'm running out of time. The three-point shooting contest is coming up this weekend. I go back to the annual, the first one in 1986, 38 years ago, in Dallas, Texas, the Union Arena. 8 contestants. Bird walks in the locker room. He said, okay, which one of y'all taking second? Because I'm winning. If you look at the last three-point shooting contest that he won in 88, he won it 3 years in a row. Detlef Schrempf went first in the championship round. He needed 17 to tie 18 to win. As he's shooting the ball, he's down by 1, the money ball. He puts up a finger in the air while the ball's in the air.
Yeah.
That's what, and so don't compare, when you hear them compare Luka to Bird, don't do that. Because like Nick, you mentioned, that dude played hurt. And his last, we didn't know this at the time, but his greatest game was his last game in '88 in the Eastern Conference semifinals when Dominique and Bird played. Game when Dominique scored 47, Bird had 34. Going in the fourth quarter, Bird only had 14. And they going back and forth. It was like a 5-minute stretch where both of them, only 2 people scoring is just those 2. I mean, and they pushed each other. Mano a mano. No.
Well, you want to talk about legendary work ethic is what ruined Bird's back was he was repaving his mother's driveway because he was like, I'm not going to hire nobody. I can do this myself.
Yeah. Threw out his back. And he threw that out in 87.
Mhm.
Yeah. Threw it out in 87. But like I said, it's that pride thing. Okay.
No, I do want to know this. I do want to know this. Do you think, because we're running out of time too, I did want to ask you this. Do you think sports promotes violence in social structures? Because, we constantly see fight. It's supposed to bring camaraderie, but we constantly see all these people fighting, people dying over wearing the wrong jersey, just all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Because people take sides. People take
Some of the
sides.
fighting is camaraderie.
Yeah, people take sides. So you got your team versus my team. You think your team is, and you got the argument. Yeah. Within the social structure, yes. Your team is better. And then, like I mentioned when we started, they have to create villains. Villains drive interest in sports, regardless of what sport. And when teams win championships, that team's winning too much. I got to hate them.
People get emotional over their team.
Emotional, yeah.
Emotions.
Right.
I think that's part of the answer to your question, Tony, is the emotions. Like the fans, they love players or they love teams or organizations so much to where they in that instance at least, they ready to die about them.
Right.
No, I agree.
And then also you have to understand a game might drive hatred towards players, towards teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, on that note,
yeah.
on that note, we are out of time, but we are definitely going to have you back on if you want to join us again, because I barely got to scratch any of my questions. And really the most important question is am I your best student of all time?
You're one of my most interested students of all time.
We'll go with that. Thank you, Professor, for joining us. We will be back tomorrow with a look at the greatest teams in the Southwest Division. Until then, I am Tony Stiles. That is unique. We do have Professor Golden on with us. We'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.